Oh, okay. So we had the first episode. We got it done. Starting at the second episode, we actually were on time. Technical issues were a thing for a very long
Two,
time.
not three. Both of the first two were
Oh,
one.
right. Links.
No.
Okay, hold on a second. Let me get this right. Go to links.
No. Wait. No.
No, clips.
Clips. Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll
You
get
can
this.
also just click it on the screen. You don't need to use it.
Ha! I got it.
Oh, okay.
What is on my face? Should we throw it up?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good.
What's going on? Look at that.
I'm not going to comment. I was having technical difficulties.
We understand. We feel your pain.
Yeah. Have you seen that? Uh-oh.
I'm gonna hit play again. All right, let's take Scott in South Carolina. Scott has been trying to call in, has been very diligent about it, and wants to talk about why some people look at evidence for God and accept it and others don't. So,
Yeah.
great question. Scott, welcome to the show.
Hey, Eric and V, how are you?
Doing good. Excited to talk with you again. Thanks for trying so hard to get on today.
Yeah, we saw you kind of dropping out over and over. We're like, what's going on?
I'm not going to comment. I was having...
I got to admit, I kind of forget which one this is.
This is the C.S. Lewis versus...
Oh, right.
We understand. We feel your pain.
Yeah, have you seen the show?
No, it's all user error. So.
Oh my goodness. That's okay. What can we help you with today? What's your question?
Well, that's my question. Last time we spoke, Eric, you asked if I could call back and we could talk about the idea of man's sinful nature, and I want to have that conversation.
Oh,
But
Yay!
I wanted to ask you guys. But I wanted to ask you this question for some time now, and it's a genuine question. It's not a setup for me to give you my answer.
Mm-hmm.
I really do wonder, through 2,000 years of Christian history, and people certainly smarter than me, have been atheists and have weighed the evidence and have completely committed themselves to the Christian idea.
Mm-hmm.
Most notably, in my mind, because I'm a big fan.
Okay, before we go any further, there's a whole lot to, just on our side of things, there are so many pieces that go into that. So the number of people through history who are smarter than me have come to this conclusion. That is definitely something that I told myself as a believer, that I may not get it, but smarter people than me do. So that's a me problem. Mm-hmm. And so as he's talking, we're listening and we're thinking about, where that's going. And so as he was kind of saying that, my first thought was, okay, this is a different kind of fallacy, right? This is going to be an ad populum or a appeal to authority. But he went into something that he was so not ready for. Okay, so for people who don't know V, you guys, V absolutely is the biggest nerd when it comes to a very specific kind of literature. And if someone is going to bring up Tolkien or C.S. Lewis, V knows their shit more than most. It's like, it's not often do we get calls that are specifically things that we have an expertise in, like a legitimate expertise. And Scott called in with one of these. Okay.
And is C.S. Lewis. Was an atheist till he was in his 30s, and finally couldn't deny the evidence. So that's my question to you. Why do some see the same evidence and believe, and others, like yourselves, I'm assuming, see the evidence and say that's not good enough?
If you were not on, I would have gone generic.
Yeah.
And been like, oh, well, this is why it's flawed reasoning. This is why, that wouldn't work. Could you imagine using that reasoning elsewhere?
And honestly, for a lot of calls, that is where we go. Not necessarily because because we don't want to speak on things we do not have expertise in. Mm-hmm. We do have expertise in informal logic and in argumentation. And so we can use that to guide people into, thinking about their argument in a more skeptical way. And that has its value. But on those rare occasions that one of us actually does have that depth of knowledge in an area, it really is always so much more fun to dive in and be like, all right, let's get into it. Let's get our hands dirty.
Yeah. So let's watch you respond here.
So it's funny you should bring up C.S. Lewis. I took an entire class at my Christian college on the Inklings.
Who are the Inklings?
The Inklings was essentially like, it was a group of Oxford professors who would meet at the Eagle and Child Tavern in Oxford and read each other's stories and brainstorm story ideas together. And it was George MacDonald for a little bit. I know that C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, obviously. There were a couple others that like cycled through, but it was essentially a writing club for Oxford professors.
That the echoes of that club are still read today.
Oh, not
That's
even the
super cool.
echoes. Like that group of people created an entire generation of fantasy literature. Like the kind of fantasy that was born in that area was everything from like ancient Grecian plays about gods and spirits to goblins and like really fairy tale oriented stuff to what C.S. Lewis did to Tolkien's epics. Like when we think about fantasy, regardless of the type of fantasy we're thinking about, probably that thread could be tied directly back to that group. Yeah.
My goodness. Okay.
Yeah. And so I actually know the story of what Lewis says is the night that he converted, or at least began truly considering it. He was on a midnight walk with Tolkien. And Tolkien was a Catholic, as we know. And he and C.S. Lewis were debating about the existence of God. And C.S. Lewis says, it's just myth. Like, we are just, it's myth. And Tolkien says, but where do the myths come from?
Bum, bum, bum.
And that's what convinced him, allegedly, according to Lewis, was that question. That's what got him. And to me, that's not very good evidence, right? Like, I'm not saying he's not smart. I think that he was brilliant. He was a professor. Just like the Oxford community there every day, like brainstorming amazing story ideas. But that's what got him. And that's kind of the crux of how I would answer your question, which is the evidence doesn't matter. It's not about what convinces the individual.
Yeah. So when you said the evidence doesn't matter, I'm just going to rewind that.
The evidence doesn't matter. It's not about.
Excuse me?
It took a minute. You were kind of in your own head, and you were like, "V just said evidence doesn't matter." What?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not about what convinces the individual person apart from that person. It's how certain kinds of evidence hit a person at a time in their life when that is convincing to them, and everything that leads up to that. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's give a little bit more info there, because the evidence does matter.
No, if you read the entire link to all of these clips are in the description. So if you ever are like, oh, I forget how that call ended or how did they get there, you can go and rewatch those. But yeah, essentially what Scott was bringing to the table was trying to do a qualitative analysis on the kinds of evidence that there was for Christianity and why it convinced people and why it didn't. And what I was trying to do here was reframe that into, I don't really care about the qualitativeness of the evidence, because ultimately when someone is making a decision, that is not mostly what they think about.
Right.
Like, if you're a professional and you are doing qualitative analysis on a specific subject, sure, that's going to be how you make your decisions. But day to day, we're not looking at every claim we come across saying, well, how qualitatively legitimate is this claim?
Yeah.
What we're doing is we have been set up by our culture, by society, by our past experience and the studies we have done thus far to analyze it and see, does it fit within my worldview? Is this something that I can get behind? Which is why it's not as important. Here's the deal. I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second here. Being analytical about a piece of evidence all the time, every time you come across evidence, is not as useful as making sure that what you are bringing to the table is accurate. And that can be a lot more engaging, that can be a lot more fun, that has more time to grow and expand. So, for example, I know that I have a specific view of the world. I wear my little, V glasses.
Yep.
And I can't control every single time something enters my head and is convincing to me. It's not possible to control what is convincing to you. And if you try, that is going to just stymie your entire life. You're just going to always be like, okay, I just learned a new claim. I need to go research all of that now and decide if that little claim is true. That's very exhausting. If you like doing that, cool. But a more efficient way to do that, way that works with your own heuristics within your brain, is to make sure that you are building up a database in the background that will kick out bad information before it convinces you. So if someone comes to you and says, hey, Eric, because you got the COVID vaccine during the next Carrington event, you are going to explode into a million pieces, right? There are a lot of things in there, right? But because you have a background in various things that you're bringing to that table, that's not going to be like the deciding factor to decide whether or not you get that booster shot, right?
Right.
So it's not necessarily in the moment analysis that is always the most reliable or the most useful. It's bringing that epistemology to the table.
Understanding of the world.
Right. So when I say evidence doesn't matter, what I'm saying is I don't really think in this context the thing we should be focusing on is that qualitative, is this good evidence? It's why did it convince Lewis and why should it convince me? And if it doesn't convince me and it did convince Lewis,
where's the disconnect?
Where is that disconnect? What are we bringing to the table that is different? And that's what we need to focus on.
In that conversation.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
and then ontological claims can be sussed out. But as far as being convinced, that doesn't have a one-to-one reflection in reality. What you're convinced of is not reality all the time. And because of that, you need to treat on its own grounds. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah, Scott was an awesome call. And I ended up, it really kind of restored my faith in the format in general, really, because it did end up getting quite a few views, which was awesome. But there was no yelling and there was no aggression. There will be in a lot of these other ones. We kind of picked the ones that were the most fun to dissect. But with Scott, it was just a really good, meaty conversation about a very obscure topic. With
people from opposite views of things.
Yeah, and it still did well. And to me, that just proves that you guys are in it for the right reasons, right? You want these good conversations and you're gonna listen to those borne out. So for me, that was really gratifying. And
in return, we're going to do our best to listen to you.
Yeah.
It's not just, us praising you for listening to us. We're going to do our best to be exemplars of what charitable listening looks like.